Hello, my name is Cole Saunders, and today I will be presenting on memory distortion and PTSD in Vietnam War veterans. First, some background on PTSD. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder can be brought on by many things, such as violence, natural disasters, or what I'll be talking about today, war. It can include many symptoms, such as severe flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, and nightmares. And according to an article by Saunders, the brain can sometimes reshape or even silence memories in order to cope with the emotional overload that PTSD can cause. Leading me to my research question: how does PTSD in Vietnam War veterans contribute to the distortion of their war memories? Now, this is not just a psychological issue. It can affect how veterans relate to themselves, relate to the past, and how society can understand war trauma. How PTSD can affect memory. PTSD can reshape memory in many powerful ways. One way is that when the brain is overwhelmed by trauma, it can sometimes suppress or distort memories in order to survive. According to an article done by Amir and McNally, traumatic memories can often be fragmented, exaggerated, or even emotionally heightened. When these emotionally heightened memories go through the veterans' minds, instead of thinking clearly and concisely, it may cause them to relive these moments just as severe as the day they happened. This leads me to my stimulus connection. I connected my work to the article by Colin Powell, titled Of Memory and Our Democracy. Colin Powell tells us to embrace memory in its full complexity. When applying this to trauma, this is pretty much saying that these veterans aren't necessarily lying about their memories or exaggerating them on purpose, but rather it is simply their minds coping and protecting them from the trauma. He also implies that in order for these veterans to start healing from their PTSD, they first need to acknowledge that some of these memories may be false and that they are hard to accept. The role of PTSD in memory bias. PTSD biases make veterans remember threats more than they do the happier moments, causing the PTSD to start causing more flashbacks as they remember the trauma more. Another article by Amir and McNally found that people with PTSD who have memory bias often focus on the trauma cues over the happy ones. In another study by Laura Mons, she found that cortisol, the stress hormone, often makes people more susceptible to memory loss. These gaps that can be made in the memory from the memory loss are often filled with vivid, unclear, and sometimes untrue memories that further lead to the trauma. Suppressing traumatic memories. While some veterans attempt to push them down and distort them, some veterans may try to suppress them entirely. And according to an article by Saunders, some veterans who attempt to silence these traumatic memories more and more will make them less accurate over time. And additionally, when one memory is suppressed, it may subsequently suppress multiple memories along with it that weren't necessarily needed to be suppressed. In a different study done by Lee Hyder, she found that veterans with PTSD can recall war memories more emotionally than they do factually, further leading to the possible distortion of it. PTSD can make memory less reliable. So PTSD can distort the small details of memories even if the veteran has a full grasp of what actually happened. Something as simple as a smell, a phrase, or even a sound can trigger a severe flashback, making this person with PTSD relive the moment over and over again. Each time this moment is relived, it will strengthen the emotional connection and attachment to the memory and slowly weaken the factual part behind it, further leading to the suppression of the memory. And according to a study by Mashayeki, emotional distress can influence how people can remember or even plan for the future, showing how powerful trauma is in shaping memory. This leads me to my counter-argument, where some critics may argue that these false memories come from peer discussions, war films, and the media. Which this makes sense because Vietnam War films, like Saving Private Ryan, often over-dramatize the events causing these veterans to possibly remember things differently. in a study done by Karina O'Donnell, she found that Vietnam veterans who shared stories in things such as peer support groups may end up changing each other's memories over time while listening to changed experiences. However, the statement is able to be reviewed. Veterans with PTSD often have altered memory, according to research, long before they look at media, war films, or even discuss these topics with other fellow veterans. In a study done by Mark Gilbertson, he found that PTSD can impair ability to remember events and sequence them in proper order, showing that the brain can rewrite memory in order to reduce emotional pain and stress. To conclude, PTSD and memory distortion are deeply interconnected. Veterans don't necessarily always intend to lie or exaggerate these memories. Rather, it is just their brain reshaping their experiences in their minds in order to help them cope and protect themselves. And then here's my bibliography. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cole. Can you tell me if your research went in a different direction than you originally expected?
I think it did go in a little bit of a different direction than I originally expected, because while I was researching for my counter argument, I delved more into the topic of looking at how the media can affect people's memory of certain things and how it can alter them.
Okay, and then how is your conclusion and conversation with the literature you looked at?
So my conclusion is in conversation with the literature that I looked at because it sort of summarizes the fact that veterans aren't always attempting to suppress their memories intentionally, or rather it's just their brains coping, which is what the literature often talks about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
6-6.